It's a bit chilly out here. A little more chilly than I'd imagined it would be. So my battery's down to 1 tick on the thing. I can't believe I forgot to recharge it. Because I really felt like doing this morning. And now I don't know if I'm going to have enough battery to get through it. But you know what? We're going to get as far as we can. And so hopefully nothing too crazy happens. Don't see why anything would. It's a very nice sunny day, and we're coming off like a real streak here. It's like rain, snow, and sleet. But anyway, so when we last left off, I just pick up right where I left off, but I suppose that's how we do these things, right? I had just taken off for Wisconsin, but to address a couple of things, someone did actually point out in the comments that I skipped the year 1986. And, well, oh geez, it's kind of muddy out here, see? Anyway, in the original recording, I did actually talk about that year, but the only thing I really said was some stuff about Flight of the Navigator, the movie, and, it just seemed like too much of a rehash of what I said about Back to the Future, because in Flight of the Navigator, they also address the current year, which is 1986. And it came out in 1986. So there was that, I guess. 1986 is also when the song Sweet Freedom by Michael McDonald came out. So that's just something worth noting. That's a really great song. Man, oh man, look at this. It just got flooded here. It's crazy, man. I may have to find a different spot to do my walking today. I don't know. Or at least to do my storytelling. There are footsteps here. Jeez, man, this is ridiculous. I just don't want to slip and fall. That's my only issue. Anyway. Well. So, yeah. Part 2. Anyway. There were a couple of things I wanted to address that so little details that I really kind of feel like should have been explained better, but it's not really anything too dramatic. Like the thing where I was talking about Joram not being able to get him to tell me what the girl looked like who came in. I never did find out who it was. The girl who came in claiming to be my girlfriend that day. Never did find out who that was. And the thing of it is, when I came in that day, he had already told Judy, this other lady, about it. And so I actually came straight out and asked him, do you remember what she looked like? But then Judy answered and said, no, I wasn't there, I don't know. So it's kind of like she was directing him to answer the question because he was the one who spoke to her, but then he never followed up and said it himself, and I didn't want to ask the question again because it would have just been like, I don't know, I just felt like I would have been pushing too hard I didn't want to come across as desperate, even though I guess if I'd really loved her, I would have done something. These days, I definitely would have. Because I'm definitely more assertive now than I was back then. Hard as that may be to believe. But anyway, and another detail about that story that I never told you was after Beverly came along and I got over Crystal and all that, at some point in the middle of 98, I was out fishing in the boat with Steve, and he told me that Crystal had come by, well, the thing is, his job was maintenance, so he went around from like one golden pantry to the next fixing stuff and things like that. And apparently this one day, somewhere in 1998, he went to one that Crystal was working at. Now, I had no idea she was still working in the golden pantry or any of that. Well, and maybe it wasn't the golden pantry, I don't know. All I know is that somehow he ended up talking to her, and she asked about me. She asked how I was doing, and he told me that. He told me that she asked how I was doing. So, I guess the good news is that she did still remember me. There's something there, and that she did want to know how I was. So that's good. I just wonder if she really wanted to know. She could have asked me herself, but that's okay. I mean, I guess, I don't know. You know, it's like I said, when you know that someone has a crush on you and you don't feel the same way about them, the last thing you want to do is lead them on, and that's what she would have been doing if she had responded. So So in a way, I see why she didn't. You know what's funny about this is just this last November, 2015, was the 20-year anniversary of that night, that first night of work. That me getting my first job and all that stuff with her and everything. So I started to message her about it. I almost did, but then I ended up not. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of Crystal Davises out there, so I'm not gonna give too many details about it because I don't want anyone else going and trying to find her and say, oh, hey, check this out. You know, Timothy Bishop is still talking about you. But I think I have actually found her, but, you know, I just haven't taken the initiative to talk to her or address her. I don't know if she would want to hear from me. Probably doesn't matter. I don't know. I mean, you hear these movies about people who are like, you know, apart for, I mean, it's not even just movies. There's like real life stories of that. My mom and Les, they actually know a couple right now who goes to church with them who were high school sweethearts, but he ended up marrying someone else, and the someone else that he was married to actually died a few years ago. So after she died, he ended up getting with the other girl, his high school sweetheart, from like 50 years ago, and now they're married. So it's really weird how things like that happen, you know? But anyway, so I think that's pretty much all to say about that. So one last thing I want to add, one last story that I need to tell before we go to Wisconsin here. I'm trying to think, it was like the last year pretty much here and there. Well, one of the things that I started doing a lot towards the end of our time in Georgia was going outside and drawing on the driveway in chalk. And one of the things I drew on the driveway was actually Crystal as a water hand, which I know is so stupid. I just can't draw humans. I've never been able to draw humans. So when I draw people, I draw them as water hands. Oh, shit. There's a bug flying towards me here. Anyway, so I drew this picture of Crystal in the driveway, and I ended up taking a picture of it. Because that's the other thing I did a lot of then, was taking Polaroids. I must have spent like, I don't know, any upwards of $1,000, $2,000 on Polaroid film. Because it was like $14 for a pack of 10 pictures to take. But I still have most of those Polaroids. There's like hundreds of them up in my closet. And so one of them I took was of that picture of Crystal on the driveway that I drew. So I'll probably flash that up here because I know I posted it on Twitter the other day. So it won't be a problem to get it to my my computer. But anyway. Oh man, the battery light is blinking. So let me see if I can get this one last shoot, I wanted to do this today, man. Anyway, well, so when I mentioned that they built a house for us on the lake, that was where the other people lived, Steve's brothers. And one of them had some kids that would actually come over sometimes. And most of the time I didn't want to hang out with them, but every now and then I did. And we would often go outside together and draw on the driveway together. But sometimes I would bring my guitar with me. And at the time, there was a song that was really popular. It's called Jumper by Third Eye Blind. And I knew how to play it. And at the time, it wasn't a single. The only two singles they had at that point were Semi-Charmed Life and How's It Gonna Be. So nobody knew this song except for people who had the album, and I had the album. So I played this song for them all the time. Like every time we went out there, it got to the point where they would ask me to play it, and they would like sing it back to me, and it was really cool. So anyway, well, one of the first things I remember as we were driving to Wisconsin with Dad on the second half of our trip after leaving Kentucky and leaving Mom behind, that song Jumper came on the radio just as we were pulling into the state of Wisconsin, and it kind of like reminded me of, you know, how they were never gonna, well, see, the thing is, at that point, that was the first time I'd known it was a single. Because for all I knew, that song might have never become a single, never got played on the radio, and they probably never would have heard it again anywhere. But since I heard it on the radio, I knew that it had become a single and that they were going to hear it on the radio at some point. And it would be sort of like, you know, hey, my song got big and got on the radio. Even though it wasn't my song, it's just cool to think that I introduced them to it first. And that later they would go on to hear it on the radio. And they would probably, every time they'd hear that song, they'd probably think, oh, hey, it's Tim's song. It's that song that Tim used to play. Or, you know, but whatever. So I wonder how they're doing these days. They must all be like in their 20s by now. I mean, what would that be? Actually, they're not that much younger than I was. They're only like 10 years younger than me. So they're probably all pushing 30 by now. But yeah, that's pretty cool. You know, I'm actually just going to keep talking until this thing dies because I don't know what else. Well, the thing is, if I let it die, is it going to not keep what I recorded? I don't want that to happen, so I'm actually going to stop here for a second. So sorry about the delay on this, guy. It's probably still going to be a few more days before I get this up. But, just my other battery on this camera was pretty much dead. Like, permanently dead. So I had to buy a new battery and a new charger on eBay. Or, I mean, well, Amazon. At any rate, long story short, it was a couple days, but got a new one. It works fine. And so we can finally continue our story here. So I think I mostly covered everything I wanted before Wisconsin. There was one other thing, but... So anyway, so I'm just going to kind of pick up where I left off here. Anyway, one of the first things we discovered, one of the first communities we got in with on the internet was what we call the Riddick community. Basically, the default, like the only chat program that WebTV worked with was Talk City. And they're still around, believe it or not. But anyway, well, in Talk City, they had these game rooms, and they were run by a bot, like a bot in the chat. And Riddick was actually short for Ridiculist, which I have no idea why they call it that, but basically it was a trivia game. The bot would throw out a category, like Fleetwood Mac songs, for example, and then once the category was out, then everybody in the chat would start typing in the Fleetwood Mac songs, like Sarah, Dreams, whatever, Don't Stop. And basically the first person to type in one of the 10 answers that the bot had randomly chosen from a queue of like 20 or 30 in each category, they would get a point for their team. And the first team to 30 points wins. So it was really fun. So we had like little tournaments they organized with specific people and teams. And I was on team 7 out of 8. We were called the LOLers, or the Lollers. Sometime later, my mom joined team 2. They were the Lizards. Anyway, so that was kind of our community. We hung out there and we always played the game. Well, as you can imagine, with any internet community, there was going to be some drama. And the biggest drama you would see in the Ridiculist community was that people would get accused of being listers. Which is like some people would go in, and when they saw the answers to a category, they'd write the answers down so they could memorize them. Or in a more extreme scenario, they would actually use the lists as they played the game. And I was one of those people. I was a lister. I wouldn't admit it at the time because people hated it so much. You didn't really gain that much of an advantage by being a lister because, number one, by the time you saw the category and looked it up on your sheets, like there were hundreds of categories. So anyway, well, I met a girl in the Ridiculous community. And I don't want to say what her handle was because I think I've already told some people, but I'll just call her RWF. She had cancer. And she worked in a hospital. And, you know, me and her talked all the time, just at great length about things, you know, and she told me about her 12-hour shifts and all this shit. And she told me about times when she would get home from work and she'd be so tired, she'd just collapse right into the bed, and then the next day, she'd wake up just in time to go right back, you know, and it's like, geez, you know, you got cancer, you probably shouldn't be working like that. But it was all she could do, you know, and it's like, so I just felt so bad for her. You know, and I know that it's like, I really don't know a lot of all the details of it, but man, it's kind of hot out here, this sun. Listen to those frogs, man. I think we need to get Kina out here to do some frog hunting. What do you think? Are you still going? I can't even see the screen at all. Anyway, well, those guys are a little obnoxious. I think I might have to turn around and go the other way. So this would have been basically the end of 1998, and I was kind of like sort of, you know, by then me and Beverly were getting pretty close. I went to church with her one day. I took her out to the movies. We did all kinds of stuff as friends. And that's all it ever was friends. But you know what? It was fine. We had some great times, man. you know, sometimes it's better that way. It's like that Blessed Union of Souls song, "You'll Always Be Mine." It sounds like a love song, but what he's really saying is "You'll always be my friend." But anyway, so like I said about this RWF, she, I don't like calling her that. Just call her Rain. I'll call her Rain. Yeah, that works better. Anyway, well, there was this other couple in the chat. Their names were Diva. The girl was Diva, and the guy was Billy Goat. And they had like this chat marriage where they got married in the chat, and I was like the best man or something. I don't even remember. It was silly, but anyway, after they so-called got married or whatever they did, I proposed, like legit proposed to Rain. I really don't know what the rules are as far as proposing to someone in a chat room. I think that's kind of silly. I don't think you actually, like, nobody seriously does that. Like, not if they really want to get married, you do it in real life, you know, but whatever. But I did it to her in the chat room, and we had this whole big party, and I did some weird dancing move where I jumped up in the air and landed on my dick. And then I came, and the force of the cum propelled me up into the air like a helicopter. I did some crazy stuff, man, let me tell you. If only, anyway. If only in real life, I guess is what I mean. What is that? It's a nice little tree there. There's a little bit of shade. Anyway. Well, I'm talking way too long about this. So let me see. I don't even remember where she lived. That's what I'm trying to think of. So I was in Georgia. Where was she? That's weird that I can't remember that because you would think. Oh, she was in Iowa. That's what it was. She was in Iowa. So I remember when I was moving to Wisconsin, I remember thinking, well, hey, I'll be a lot closer to her. You know, a lot closer. Better to the, you know, like a better chance of actually maybe getting to go meet her. Well, problems started coming up when I moved to Wisconsin. All of a sudden, like, you know, and it's like, it wasn't easy at first because, like, Dad and Deborah, they were living in a one-bedroom apartment and they had to transfer to a two-bedroom. So when we got there, they were in the process of moving across the way. So we were moving furniture. So I remember sleeping out on the mattress in the living room one night with the New Radicals album playing, and there's so many songs on that album still make me think about her. You know, after we got there, I started getting these emails from her asking where I was and why I wasn't responding right away, and it just, she got really clingy, and it got to the point where she actually, like, went into the chat room under a different name just to see if I was, like, being nice to any other girls or flirting with any other girls. Then this one day I was in the room and I said something, I don't remember what it was. It wasn't like a flirty comment. I think I just made a smiley face at a girl or something because she said something funny or whatever. And just after I did that, I saw a name leave the chat room, because back then when somebody left the chat room, it actually announced it to the chat room. And this person who left, I'd never seen the name before. It was like blank Angel F or something. It's like somehow, I don't know how I knew it, but I just knew it was her. Because a few minutes after that, I got an email from her saying, "So you're cheating on me, are you? I see you're flirting with other girls in the chat room." And I was like, oh my God, dude, I wasn't flirting, just being nice. You know, I know there's a fine line there sometimes, I guess, especially in a chat room, you really don't know. Anyway, she started like getting all angry at me all the time, and then we would make up, and then it was like, oh, it got to a point where I started to wonder if it was even worth it. But anyway, well, I can't believe it's taken me this long to tell this story. We're gonna have to do 3 parts of this thing, man. Well, I mean, if we do, we do, I guess. This is a story. Anyway, oh my God. Well, to make a long story short, at some point, I don't remember when it was, I think around February or March of 1999, I found out something that I couldn't believe. It turned out that this girl, Rain, didn't have cancer, was using someone else's pic as her own, and an assortment of other things anyway. Well, we never saw her again, but one of her best friends basically, well, it was Diva actually, she came up and told me what was going on, and that was pretty much it. So that was it for me and Rain. There was this other girl I flirted with a lot called Love123. Her real name was Mickey, M-I-K-I, and she lived in Texas. And we sort of had a little thing, you know, went on and off, but, you know, it never really went anywhere, sadly. But she was always really nice. Sometimes I wonder about her. I don't know. But talking about internet relationships is so boring, though, isn't it? Those videos that you see of me playing Ocarina of Time, like, in my vlog from whenever, 1999 or whatever, that was then. That was where we lived then. So, because I knew Ocarina of Time was coming out. I don't remember what, like, the exact release date was. It might have been out while we were still in Georgia. I don't know. But I didn't get it. I didn't get a chance to. And when we got to Wisconsin, I didn't really know my way around, so, but I did manage to find a job, thankfully. And I was worried about that, you know, because the only job I got in Georgia, I got a job because I had connections, you know, because my stepdad's father owned the company, so they were able to get me in. But you know, when I got to Wisconsin, I was going to be on my own, you know, who knows. But somehow, I got there and managed to get a job at Pick and Save right away. Easy as pie, third shift stocking. And I'd never worked third shift before, so it was all very different and new and exciting and weird. So I don't know if I might like have a piece of video that I could throw in of my first day there, or like one of my first days there.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is, me, Timothy Bishop, Flame Pillars, Darius, Shadows in the Rain, whatever you want to call me. I'm here. And as you can see, by the lovely white outside, we are in Wisconsin, quite happily I might add. And I just got off of work, so I'm kind of tired, so I'm hoping you don't expect the usual music video from me this morning. I currently work a third shift job at a grocery store that you can see right out, excuse me, you can't see it out that window, you can see it out that window. It's called Pick and Save, and it's where I work. Third shift, 10:30 p.m. to 7 a.m. every day. Well, every day that I work anyway. Not the days that I'm off, of course. What do we have for Johnny? And behind door number 5 we have the Bishop's apartment, fully renovated. We'll fly you and a guest down to Neenah, Wisconsin for a comfortable stay at the Bishop's house, where there's always something on the stove. And would you talk about good timing? Folks, tell them what else they've won. Tell Johnny, you'll tell them they have won fish!
Because I do have videos from that time. You know, I got the job, I worked with this guy named Todd. He was a total dick. Like, I don't know. Because he was like training me to put the stuff on the shelves, which really wasn't that hard, but there was like a specific number system to it, so you had to make sure the numbers matched. And you would be surprised how hard it is sometimes to tell the items apart. Like when you got canned tomatoes, some of them are no salt added, some of them are not no salt added, some of them are this, some of them are that. And there was just like the tiniest differences that would screw me up. And anyway, and if I was holding a can for too long, he would come over and look and see what it was and then tell me where it went on the shelf. And so the whole time I'm sitting there trying as hard as I can to spot things as fast as I can, you know, so that he doesn't have to come over and help me out, you know. So that anxiety just made it even more difficult than it already was. Anyway, and I remember this one time he saw what I was holding, and then he said, duh, as he pointed to where it went on the shelf. And I'm like, dude, this is my first night. Seriously, come on, man. I don't know, but anyway. Hey, that's what I mean. Like, he was just, something about him just made me uncomfortable. But anyway, I worked the job for about 3 months, and eventually I quit. So I'm trying to remember why that was that I quit the first time, because I did it twice. I went back to Pick and Save the next year at the end of, well, I guess it was the end of 1999, going into 2000, and I worked there for another 3 months doing the same thing, and then I quit again. But the second time, well, I think I know why. I think the reason I quit the first time was because we were moving. Because we actually moved into the house on West Cecil, and that was, yeah, that was a ways. It's a little further away from the store than I was used to. I've never been stung in my life, and I don't want to feel that now. It's freaking hot weather, boy, I tell you, it's coming too. And all the bugs are coming with it, like cockwork. Anyway, yeah, so anyway, we moved over to West Cecil, and so when I went back to Pick and Save after we lived on West Cecil, that was a different Pick and Save. And that was the one that I ended up working at for a really long time. And that one was so shitty too, like, oh my god, it was the ugliest store. The whole thing was just a big white box. it might as well have been a mental institute. So here I was at the second Pick and Save going along, and by then I had discovered ePinions, which is a place where I wrote movie and music reviews. And some of those you can still read if you go to if you go to the Wayback Machine and punch in www.flamepillar.com. The page is still there, like they have it archived, and most of the links still work. I'm starting to see them disappear one by one. It's kind of pissing me off. I don't know why they would be deleting pages. For example, last night on Reddit, I saw a thread that was like, what are two movies that have basically identical plots? And I was going to say Rookie of the Year and Angels in the Outfield. But I thought, well, no, let me go to my review first, because I remember pointing out like 7 similarities in my review, and they were really good ones, like really detailed ones. And so I went to look up the review, which I know was there because I had just seen it a few months ago. Now it's not there. So it's like some of them are disappearing, and I don't get why that is. It's like, do they only have so much space and they just have to take away certain ones? I don't know. But it's kind of like, it's making me wonder if I shouldn't have copied those down. So by now I had started writing ePinions, but I was doing it for my web TV, which really kind of sucked because web TV had this thing where it could only put in so many characters. So I had to write really short reviews, and it sucked. So I could never get the really good ratings, but I knew I was a good writer. Like, I knew I could write good reviews. So all I had to do was ditch the web TV and get a computer, and then I'd be able to put in as many as I wanted to. And eventually that did happen when we visited Mom. She gave me one. That was like July of 1999. We went down and saw her and drove all that way. Oh, and by then I had actually started smoking. That was right around the time that I started to become really, how do you say it? It started really hardcore. Initially, I kind of started in Georgia, really. It's like me and Beverly smoked our first one together. I took a picture of it. I was taking pictures of everything back then. We visited Mom and I got the computer, so I was able to write good ePinions, yeah. And we got to the end of 1999, and I got the second job at Pick and Save for another 3 months. Now, the reason I quit that time, the second time, was because my dad and the girl he was with, Deb, they were like always getting on my case about, doing more with my life and not working some loser job, and it's like, if you remember from before, he wanted me to go to college, and they always wanted me to be successful because they knew I would be somehow, some way. And they saw it in me. They saw the potential. It's just too bad I didn't see it in myself, I guess. For their sakes, I eventually just got it up and went down to a temp agency, see if I couldn't find a computer job. I guess, I don't know what else you call those jobs. Computer jobs, the jobs where you sit at a computer. Those jobs. I wanted one of those. At the time, I could type 70 words a minute, and I was an ace at math. I could do all kinds of big math problems in my head. I was so good. I would have been perfect for a job like that. So, the temp agency, they hooked me up. They hooked me up with a job at Guardian Insurance, putting in claims. And so that was pretty amazing. I got to take the bus up to Appleton, because now I still didn't have a car, so I had to take the bus. But fortunately, the bus went right by the building, so it was like perfect. So for a while, I rode the bus into work every day, and that was pretty, I don't know, I'd have to say that was pretty cool, though. Those were good times. So I worked up in Appleton on the 4th floor of the building, right downtown, center of Appleton, where the mall is, where you walk in and there's a Burger King on the right. I had breakfast at that Burger King every day for, oh my God. It reminds me of one of the tapes I made where I was like, here goes the black guy that works at Burger King. That's such a long story, but anyway. If anybody remembers that story, you're amazing. But, so I basically sat at a computer all day and put in claims. And you would be surprised how easy it is to get tired at a job like that. Like, I loved it, don't get me wrong, I was always thankful for it. But there were some days when I would just zone out, and I just couldn't concentrate, and I couldn't make it work. It sounds so easy to just sit at a computer and punch in numbers, but I'm telling you, when you do it for long enough, you get lethargic, you get desensitized, you stop thinking about all the things that are great about it, and you start thinking, it's boring, I don't want to do this today, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like some days were harder than others, because sometimes we would have skinny batches, which were really simple claims. There are 50 claims in each folder, so usually each folder would be like about that thick. But sometimes the folders would get up to about that thick, and we would call those the fat batches. And some days the batches were fat, some days they weren't, but some days they were. It just depended on how complicated the claims were, you know, because some of them you could just put in the information, say yes or no to send them the money, and boom, you're done. It's hard to believe that I actually did that for a while, that I actually decided whether or not insurance people got their money. It's like there was a very strict system to it, you know, and you had to go by the system, and I always did. But, man, I tell you, some days, you would get tired of it. You would just, like I said, you'd zone out, you get lethargic, and you start thinking about what you're doing, you start falling asleep at the computer. You know, I never actually did fall asleep to the point of snoring, but there were days, man. You know, I'd have my Coke right there beside me, even the caffeine, still sitting there, zoning out, man. 3 months passed. By now, I was smoking pretty much full force. I remember one day, like, I had Camel Reds on me, and I remember trying to smoke 3 cigarettes on a break because I was just trying so damn hard to live my life to the fullest, to feel as good as I could possibly feel, to get as high as I could possibly get. And I thought 3 cigarettes on a break would do that for me. So I jammed out to Carry On by Space Hog, so I'd have that song stuck in my head. You know, and then I went out there and I did it. You know, and it didn't help at all. Didn't do shit for me. Once you've been smoking for like a year, or even 6 months, I'm telling you, they don't do shit. They stop working. Then you're just stuck doing it and getting nothing out of it. And that's why I stopped. 3 months later, and it was only a 3-month gig. Like, it wasn't a guaranteed job. But it was paid, so thank God for that. So I definitely took advantage of the pretty decent money that I was making at that. My pay rate there was $7.25 an hour, but let me tell you, that was a big deal to me at the time. Like, I was in hog heaven with that, because when I first got the job at Golden Pantry back in 1995, my starting pay was $5 an hour. Then I got a raise and went to $5.25. Got another raise, went to $5.50. So, yeah, making $7.25 an hour is definitely nothing to sneeze at. I think by the time I quit Golden Pantry, I was up to $6.25 is all I'd made. All I'd made it up to for managing a deli. You know, go figure. All those 70-hour weeks. You know, even at $6.25 an hour, when you work 70 hours a week, you still bring home a pretty big paycheck. I remember taking pictures of my first $300 paycheck, my first $400 paycheck. Anyway, well, I was only working 40 hours at this temp job, but it was considering the effort I was putting in, it was grand. It was totally grand. Yeah, so once the 3 months were up, I basically had to go back to the temp agency and talk to them and see if they could find anything else for me, but I ended up not getting hired for that job. And I think part of the reason for that was actually because I wasn't very good about my hygiene. You know, when you're working in a Golden Pantry deli or whatever, it doesn't matter so much because you smell like food all day. Like, no amount of body odor or fart odor. And, I mean, you could fart all day in that deli and no one would know it because all they smell is fried chicken. So you mix that with the smell of digested fried chicken, it's basically the same difference, right? I didn't end up keeping that job because I don't even remember the exact words of what they said to me. They said something about the bathroom. You know, like, I don't know. I don't remember the words. Something about the bathroom, like your bathroom habits or when you go to the bathroom, something, I don't know. You know, when I was hanging out with Mary and Chris and Bev, I was always like the poop man. I was the fart man. You know, and it's like, that is funny, but I hate for that to be like my defining feature. And yet, you know, you got fired from a job for that very thing. Maybe that is your defining feature. Maybe you are the fart man. I don't know, man. Anyway, maybe you're the man who can make it okay to fart in society. I'll be the revolutionary who made it okay. Finally okay to fart. You know, it's actually really hot out here. It's by comparison, you know. So I'm working up a little bit of a sweat here. This is good, though. Well, after that job, they got me to another one that was kind of similar, where I would sit in the office, and semi-trucks would come in, and I'd have to process what they were bringing in. Like, they'd bring me an invoice, and I'd have to match it up to one of the ones we already had and something. It was kind of weird, but it was kind of cool. But it was also kind of boring because I basically sat there all day and people I even did overhear a couple of times people having conversations saying, well, all he does is sit on his ass in that office. We should get him doing something. And I'm like, dude, I can hear you. But anyway, well, that job lasted about a month and then I was gone. And by then I was like still smoking. After I lost the second job, it was just like, I kept, they continued to look for me. The temp agency did. But there was just, I never got any calls. I guess they couldn't find anything, or I don't know what happened. It's actually my sister hooked up with a guy, Josh. And he was pretty cool. I always liked him. Anyway, he was working at Motomart at the time, and he talked to the manager about hiring me on. It's right around the middle of 2000. I got the job at Motomart. And Motomart was up in Appleton, so it was a long drive, and it was and it was also third shift. It was like 10 to 6, but I figured, whatever. And I only worked 2 days a week there. But man, it was 2 of the nicest days of the entire week. I used to look forward to that job. A gas station is kind of like, you would think that would be the kind of job that high school students would get on their summer vacations, or that old people get as a last resort because they have literally no other options. But I was in this job, and you know what? I enjoyed it. And of course, it didn't hurt that I could basically smoke anytime I wanted to. All I had to do was go into the back. Dick allowed it. Dick was the manager. And I also had lottery tickets, which I'd played sometimes, maybe a little too much, to be honest. But I enjoyed the job. I'd crank up the radio. They had oldies on. And I actually started to like oldies because of how much I liked that job. It was just crazy. And anyway, well, so we've kind of been in a cycle here of keeping jobs for 3 months and then losing them. And sadly, as it turns out, Motomart was no exception. When it got around to November, obviously snow season was starting up. And what happened there was I wasn't on my dad's insurance for the car, but I was driving his car to work because I still didn't have my own car. You don't have experience driving in the snow. You've lived in the South all your life. Now you're about to drive 20 miles down the highway to Motomart every night or every 2 nights a week in the snow. It's like, basically, in a roundabout way, he was telling me he wasn't happy about that. And that's how I took it. So that's what I did. I quit Motomart. See, here's the other thing. There was this girl that worked at Motomart. Her name was Melissa. And when I first started there, I didn't know who she was. All I saw was this card that she had sent from camp, that she was on camp. So she did work there, but she was on vacation for a few months to go to camp or whatever. And she had left behind this card with this cute little note. And I just looked at it, and I could tell by the handwriting this girl was adorable. It's just one of those things. She drew the little smiley face and just whatever. So it's like, I liked this girl before I even met her, basically. By the time she did start back there, and wonder of wonders, no surprise, she was cute, man. She wore glasses. She was just all around. She was something. But anyway. So the first time I played Final Fantasy VIII, actually, I named Rinoa Melissa, because that was that summer when I rented Final Fantasy VIII when I was house sitting for Mary, because she and Josh went off. That's the thing with Josh. He always liked driving around. He would just get in the station wagon and just drive for an hour in one direction and then come back for no reason at all, just to be out, to look at nature or to listen to music. I mean, I don't know. I have memories of riding with him and listening to Six Cycle Carousel by Lifehouse. Every time I hear that song, I think about riding with him, because we heard that album for the first time. We met this guy once, and his name was Gino Paul. And according to him, he actually had pictures to prove it. He played alongside, Alan Jackson at the Country Awards or something, I don't know. He was famous in some way, I'm not really sure how, but he was really good with a guitar. And I remember us calling Dad one night, trying to get him to come over, and Gino playing the guitar in the phone to try to convince him to come over. So it's just like, wow. And that did it too. But at the time, Dad was with Deb, and I haven't talked about Deb yet because there really isn't much to say. She was cool. He met her in Georgia, actually. He worked at a Subway with her. And they have this story where they say that he was driving a Mickey's truck. The Mickey's snack doodly things, the marshmallow pies or whatever. And then there's Little Debbie's. She was driving a Little Debbie's truck. and he was driving a Mickey's truck, and they crashed into each other. And that's not a true story, but that's always the story they would tell. And it was kind of cute. She was cute, actually. So, but they actually met working at a Subway, and they got married. I went to the wedding. Oh, and at that wedding, I actually held I had this little keychain that said Crystal on it, and I held it in my hand through the entire wedding with a ring of the keychain around my finger like a ring. You know, I was so... But yeah, it's like I was marrying Crystal that day. I was so true to her, holding her in my hand at this wedding. Just, wow. Anyway, just another small detail to add to the thing. That's what I like, though. I like being able to go back and add these details now that I have context for them, you know? So when he moved to Wisconsin, he took her with him. He took Deb with him, and they went up there. And I don't know what happened to her, but she changed, and she started to get to be an alcoholic. And it got worse and worse and worse. And it got to the point where she would start asking me for money. And she had, like, there was this one incident where she, like, stole my sister's car and ran off to dump a bunch of bottles in the dumpster somewhere so she wouldn't get caught. And then someone told Dad that they saw her driving Mary's car and just all this stuff. It was really weird. She also actually went so far as to make out a check. She actually took my checkbook and forged my signature on a check to try to get money out of my account. And he confronted her with it. He found the check and he confronted her with it, and he showed it to me, and he said, "You did this." And she still denied it, like she was that delusional. So, anyway. Well, it didn't take long. She was out of the picture. But in the meantime, we were going a lot to karaoke. And we had, like, different karaoke bars we went to. There was Trina. There was just Marty and Teresa. And there was... So Marty and Teresa was probably the ones we went to the most, though, because he always let people sing 2 songs on their turn. So I'd get up there and I sing my crap. I sing Someday by Sugar Ray. I sing whatever, Smash Mouth and shit. Just whatever was popular at the time. And then one night somebody got up there and they sang I Love You by Climax Blues Band. And this was one of the few songs from my childhood that I hadn't rediscovered in the last 10 years. So when he sang that song, I'm telling you, there is no cigarette that could have put me on the high that song put me on. I could not stop smiling. This song was just killing me. Of course, nowadays I listen to it, it's just, yeah, it's good. But still, in that moment, dear God. So that instantly became a regular song of mine. I sang that all the time. Whew. Man, I sang the hell out of that song. So, and there were a lot of other good ones, but yeah. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because something does happen with Marty and Teresa eventually, but we'll get to that. Let's see here. So where was I anyway? Okay, Motomart. I just quit Motomart. I didn't want to, but I didn't have a choice. I didn't think that, like, you know, I wasn't on my dad's insurance. I didn't want him to worry. So I quit Motomart. As I drove home that morning of my last day, Melissa came in that morning, you know. And so I was saying, I'm going to miss you. And she said, I'm going to miss you and blah, blah, blah. All the shit that people always say that they don't really mean, that they don't really care. It's whatever. And wow, how cynical am I? Anyway, I drove home from Motomart that morning. I was on 41 going south. No. I was on 441 going south. And the song If You're Gone by Matchbox 20 came on the radio. Now, I never was a big fan of this song, to be honest. I don't know what it is. It's just kind of bland. But that morning, it was perfect. They couldn't have picked a more perfect song to play that morning. Jeez Louise, I can't believe this. I've only made it to like 2 or 3 years, and I've been talking for almost an hour here. And here I was saying that it got less interesting from this point on. I don't know, maybe not. So, but yeah, that was it. I was unemployed again. I quit Motomart. I was unemployed. I didn't know what else to do. And I was just like, shit, you know. So sometimes I hung out with Mary and Josh, you know. That was really the only good times I could find is when I hung out with them. And it was really nice. They were cool. They still are cool, what am I saying? So then this one night, I went out on a double date, sort of. It wasn't really a double date, I don't know what you'd call it. Basically, they were going out to eat at Perkins with one of their friends from high school, Kelly. And I just ended up going with them somehow, I don't even remember. I think they just asked me on the spur of the moment, do you want to go? And I'm like, well, yeah, sure. Anyway, this girl Kelly turns out to be completely gorgeous. Like, she's a redhead and oh man, I don't know. But once again, here I was falling in love with my sister's friends, and I don't know if she even ever really knew to what extent my feelings for her went on, because they weren't really that big a deal. It's like, we spent one night together, but the thing is, when we were sitting at that table across from each other, me and Kelly, we were like connecting. Like, we were like, she laughed at stuff that I said, and just like, she laughed at me so many times. I know that doesn't mean anything, like, oh, she laughed at me, whoop-de-doo. But I don't know, I felt so normal that night. Which, when I say normal, you don't realize how much of an extreme, like, adjective that is for me. To say that I feel normal, like a normal person. Like I'm actually using normal body language, moving my hands the normal way that you're supposed to move when you talk. And just stuff like looking people in the eyes, I was looking at her in the eyes, man. And she also ordered the same thing as me that night. I ordered the chicken fingers and macaroni and cheese, and I actually went first. So it wasn't me copying her, it was her copying me. Anyway. And then as we're driving home, we stop by this gas station, and Mary and Josh get out, and they make some joke to me and Kelly as we're sitting in the car, saying, I don't want to see these windows steamed up when we get back out here. But just for the briefest of moments, there was the implication that I could actually have a girlfriend, and that wouldn't be such a horrible thing, Me, Mr. Fartmaster. Anyway. So, I mean, nothing happened. We sat in the car, and this, like, they had the Blink-182 CD was on, and it got to the song What's My Age Again, so I turned it up and said I liked it, and she said she liked it, and that was pretty much it. But actually, the song that ended up making me think about her more than any other one was Adam's song. And I know that sounds completely fucked up. It's because all my life when I've listened to music, I always listen to the music first, not the lyrics. The lyrics always come second to the music for me. And this melody, just the extremeness of it, like, there are very few songs in the world that rock as hard as that song does. When I say rock hard, I mean like the way the chords just penetrate into you and explode right back out of you again. It's rending you, tearing you from within. Love is something that deserves to be celebrated. It's extreme. It's not always pretty and tiny and prim and proper. It's heart-rending. It's tough. It tears you apart. Do people really do that in this world? Do people really connect as much as me and her connected that night without it leading to something? Because if that's the case, then how must it feel when you do connect with somebody and it leads to something? How must that feel? How high must that connection make a person? Because I was pretty high on what we connected at Perkins that night, I'll tell you. And the wind is starting to pick up, so I hope you can still hear me. So I tell you. Anyway. It has been an hour, and I don't think I'm even halfway. I don't even think we made it to 2001 yet. Oh, I guess I should mention, with the turn of the millennium, I was at karaoke that night, and the first song I sang in 2000 was She's Always a Woman by Billy Joel. I'm only mentioning that because it's one of the things, but it's not really like it's a song. It's not that interesting of a song, to be honest. I could have picked something more interesting, but whatever. I think I also danced with some girl, Robin, because they took a picture of me and her boobs were just all over the place, and just, I don't know. I'm not a boobs person, to be honest, But whatever. Anyway, that wind. Stop it. We are going to have to cliffhang this. I don't believe this. I mean, 2 years? Anyway, it's just such a weird time, though. So here it was. I just quit Motomart. I didn't know what to do, and Final Fantasy IX came out. I didn't even realize it was out because I wasn't paying attention to video games anymore. It's like the last video game that I'd bought. Well, no, there was Ocarina of Time, though, wasn't there? I did know about that one because, well, it's Zelda. I mean, come on, you have to know. How could you not know? But ever since I let my subscription to Nintendo Power run out, it's like I wasn't following the scene, so I didn't know. So I was walking through Target this one night, and I saw Final Fantasy IX on the shelf. And I was like, what, this is out now? I didn't realize this even existed. And after having had so much fun with Final Fantasy VIII, I was like, well, gee, maybe I should pick this up. So I did. I just picked it up on the spur of the moment and ended up playing it for a couple of months that year. So I was unemployed again, playing Final Fantasy IX. And eventually, it just came down to, like, I didn't know what else to do, so I had to go back to Pick and Save. For the third time, I had to go back to Pick and Save. I just worked there for 3 months, I just worked there for 3 months and then quit. I worked there for another 3 months and quit. Here I was about to come back for a third time. By now, Dan, the store manager, was kind of like, oh, dude, you know, you got to make up your mind. Are you going to stay this time or what? What's going on here? So I told him, yeah. I mean, at this point, you know, I tried the temp agencies. It didn't work out. I couldn't keep an office job because of my bathroom habits, whatever it was. And it's not like I was that bad. I saw my numbers compared to the other people because we all wrote them down at the end of the day, and I was one of the last people to leave. So I got to see everybody else's numbers, and let me tell you, I was in the top 3, at least. There was this other girl, Kim Besaw. She always managed to do like 400 claims. I'm like, how the hell is she doing that with those fat batches? Like, she must not be caring enough. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. So we're heading back now. We are going to have to cliffhang. I don't believe this. I did not expect for this to happen. Like, there's so many stories. I guess I'm really getting... Well, see, the thing is, now that it's getting later in my life, I'm remembering more details. I don't remember that many details from, like, my kidhood, my childhood, my kidhood, really. So at the end of 2000, I started back at Pick and Save for the third time. And I stocked shelves just like I'd done before. And this was like, I guess, January. Actually, no, this was January 2001 was when I started there. Because I remember, just like before, that I did it for 3 months. I stocked for 3 months. And instead of quitting this time, they actually offered me a position in the bakery. And on May 1st, or was it April 30th? I think it was April 30th, 2001. I worked my first day in the bakery. And I felt a little awkward. I still remember when I left that day, I kind of did this weird bowing motion as I backed out of the doors with my arms out to my sides, and just, it's so stupid, I don't know, but anyway, well, that was the start of that, basically. Just as I was starting the job at Pick and Save for the third time, I actually moved in with my sister, and my sister had moved out at a certain point somewhere in there in the year 2000. And she moved in with Josh to the Apple Blossom Apartments. And at some point, I moved in with them. So, it was mostly kind of, well, to get away from Deborah would have been one way. But I figured at this point, you know, I was an adult. I needed to start acting like one, getting out there. And I guess moving in with your sister is one step up from living with your parents. So, that's what I did. Just yanked away from that thing right there. Living with my sister and Josh and playing Final Fantasy IX still. Played a little bit of Grandia at the end of the year there, I remember. I remember not being too impressed with it, but then, well, I wasn't into video games at all then, really. It's like, geez, I don't know what happened there. It's like I just stopped playing. Anyway. And then I think that was around the time that I started doing this thing where I'd watch the same movie every day for like a month. Because I did that with Memento in that house. I remember doing it with Memento. Just watched it every day. Every time I hear that weird music that's playing, I don't even know if you would call it music, but like that little plays when he's in the hotel room. I hear that music and think about that apartment instantly. So by then I had my own computer. I was writing on ePinions, doing really good for myself. So I remember before I moved in with my sister, I was alone in the house one day, and it was like broad daylight, just like it is now. And I put on this movie, What Lies Beneath. And it scared the ever-living piss out of me, that movie. It was like broad daylight I was watching, and that movie scared me so bad, I don't even know. But I remember that. Just these random things. There's bees all over the place here. I can't believe this, man.